Thanks everybody for joining the Process Champion Network. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Priya to talk about change management. Thanks, Priya.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Okay, hi everyone. I love to see the big turnout. So, as Mike mentioned, today's topic is change management and process improvement projects. This actually came up as a hot topic back when we finalized a survey for the last year of PCN topics. So, this comes directly from your feedback and what we heard from the survey of what you guys wanted to see at this new PCN, this year's new PCN. So change management and process improvement projects is what we'll be focusing on today. And then in the process jam, Mike and I also have a session on the same topic, and we'll be expanding on it a bit further. So let's talk change management and how it can influence your process improvement projects. As the slide says, you can invest a ton of resources into your process improvement project, whether it be personnel, hard dollars, time, effort, systems, you name it. And this could be to update or create a new process that could technically be perfect for your organization. But if people don't understand it, don't care about it, find the overall process confusing to adopt, and they're defaulting to old methods, then the likeliness of your project succeeding could be zero. So the obvious answer might be to mandate, this new system usage. But typically, what we see is that tactic does not work in the short term. So in the long term, that could be a great tactic, for 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. But when you're now actually, kicking off and implementing your project, we do not find that mandating 100%, to the new process actually works. And what we find is that it's all about enabling adoption with your people. So as the slide says, it's not about forcing people to use the new system. It's about really inspiring, training, and enabling their desire to actually want to adopt the system. So I want to give you a real life working example of this with BPMO. So we embarked on a journey back probably in 2018, where we were looking for a new technology or system to map processes. Typically, we were thinking of using Visio and Lucid charts, PowerPoint slides, really anything that people were comfortable with at the time that could generate a flow chart. But honestly, it was tedious. We would have long flip chart flow charts in the back of our office that took up space. And it just wasn't easy to translate around and kind of get people on the same technology. So we sought out to look for a technology that most people could adopt, that was easy to share, that was maybe cloud-based. And we ended up with what you guys know today as Process Manager, formerly as ProMap when we first launched it. So talking about, adoption, getting people to be inspired, training and enabling them, we as a BPMO actually had to find those first set of stakeholders who were very gung-ho about wanting to use a new system. So inspiring a group of people who are already wanting to make the change with us, bringing them on board for the first cohorts where we were learning the system ourselves. And then you'll find that long term, we also have enabled different change management practices to keep that sustained system going of helping people learn and being inspired and enabling their ability to use this new system. So I'll keep talking about this example about how BPMO kind of embarked on this process manager journey, because it's one that is near and dear to our hearts, where we actually started it as a grassroots movement here at Berkeley. And it's something that even 6, 7 years later, we're still doing change management principles to make sure people adopt. Okay. So let's talk about project management versus change management. Often I hear people talk about them hand in hand, but you may not necessarily know the distinct difference between them. So I have a couple graphics here on the screen where we have 2 arrows depicting the technical side and the people side. So the technical side is going to refer to the project management side of things, and the people side is going to refer to the change management side of things. And really what this slide is trying to convey is that the technical side of your project can be pretty rigid and set in stone, where you have 3 distinct phases that you go through from a technical standpoint: current state, transition state, future state. But it's that people side that tends to be a little different. So you'll notice that everybody will be in the current state together, But as we continue through the project journey, that transition and future state become a little more muddled and convoluted. And so it's really in the transition and future state that we have to focus on ensuring people are building their knowledge, gaining that desire to want to change. And ultimately, we as a project are supporting them throughout that user adoption journey. So for projects to succeed, like I said, it's not going to be a mandate, but likely having your project and your change management sides work symbiotically together for the project to actually succeed. So we have a couple, kind of keywords here that we refer to when we think project and change. From the project management side, we kind of keep it as design, develop, and deliver. So that ultimately gets us to our end product and solution. And for change management, we think of it in a people way, which is embracing, adopting, and usage. So ultimately getting user adoption for whatever solution we're implementing. So it may seem simple when I put a graphic on a slide and say, oh yeah, it's just easy as thinking of change management and project management as two separate things. But it honestly feels like a continuous uphill battle for every project if we don't actually know how to implement change and project together. The truth is, humans are creatures of habits. We enjoy routine, we like predictability, and things we already know the outcome of. So when we perceive a threat to our usual routine and it throws off our rhythm of what we already know, our gut reaction is likely to hesitate and resist, even if we think the thing that's coming could be good for us. You'll see that in your projects for process improvement, some people flat out resist. Others want to hear the reason why, they want to be bought over, and some other people are somewhere in between. So what could we do as, change leads or change practitioners to kind of help people go through this journey? First things first, we have to understand what it is to be human, which should be easy because we all are, unless somebody here can tell me different in the chat. And we should expect the incoming resistance because it's an absolutely normal and natural reaction. Next thing we want to do is we want to help people understand the why. So this is, why is there a need for this process improvement project? Why is there a need for possibly this new technology or system? Why is there a need for this change? And if you find that you can't really answer the why or can't communicate the why, then I would actually, beg you to think about what the project is at hand that you're working on and think about your problem statement. Do you actually have a real project here, or are you just implementing something to implement? And then lastly, what we're going to do is we're going to help them work through that emotional kind of grief journey or emotional stages that they go through. And ultimately together, all these things are going to help them reach organizational change just through their natural human behavior. So, I'll give you a real life example. I think we're now about to come up on HR's open enrollment period here, just at the end of the month into November. And I don't know about you guys, but healthcare costs change every year for me. And that is something that I personally have to go through my change journey every single year. It's something where you're assuming and you're hoping and you're praying that the prices stay the same from last year, but usually they don't. Usually they go up. In a rare chance, they might go down if we have great negotiators on our side. But I'm going through the same journey that I've just depicted here, which is I'm kind of resisting it. I'm not wanting to kind of pay more for my healthcare. I'm already paying so much. It's causing me to go back and look at the packet again that HR rolls out and determine whether, hey, am I still going with Kaiser? Am I going with another tier coverage because it makes sense for me financially or for what my medical costs coverage needs? And then ultimately, I'm accepting my final decision and having to work through it either with HR benefits employees or just kind of working through it myself by understanding, hey, they've given me all the information. I've just got to make my peace with this is the new rate change. So that's kind of just a layman's example, but it is something that we all go through every year. And you can kind of understand, the natural human reaction to that example. Okay. So let's keep pressing on and talk about why change is actually hard for us. So generally at home, we make peace with changes that we have to just overcome naturally, whether that's with kids, partners, or just, being with ourselves. But at the workplace, it's a little bit different. We rely on trusted advisors and our leaders and their voices. And a major reason why we see resistance from our staff or the clients that we serve is due to a communication gap. So that's what this slide is all about, that communication gap. So typically our rule of thumb is to have people listen to our leadership and how they communicate their goals. Ultimately, what we want is our leaders to talk and very succinctly communicate what is the goal of this process improvement project? Why are we focusing on improving or creating this efficiency? What kind of benefits can we all expect? And is there any data to back up, whether that's metrics or any sort of survey data of why we are embarking on this collective journey together? And then from the employee side, what we expect to see is complete reaction to anything the leader says. So you're not expecting them to really accept anything automatically. You're expecting the employee to meet you with either some sort of questions or resistance. And so on my slide, I say, they might say something like, how is this going to affect me? Or what's in it for me? Or what's changing for me? They might worry about job security. You might be implementing a new technology or system that is integral and part of their everyday life that takes up a lot of time. And they may be thinking, oh my gosh, is this now my job in jeopardy by implementing this new process? They may consider personal risk and just overall react really emotionally, which you as a leader may not be expecting, but you should. In change management, there are proven ways that we know that can bridge the gap between the leader, the leadership message, and what the employee is receiving as their message. And so you can see on my slide here, I have some really simple solutions, which sometimes we just don't implement because we're so bogged down in the technical side of implementing the project. So first and foremost, have real face-to-face conversations. Why do we say this? It's because it's the most layman's easiest way to talk to people about what they're facing and reacting to their emotions. We can look at body language. We can see how they're receiving the information. It offers us an opportunity to talk candidly about the process improvement topic and the project. And it just gives an open pathway to show empathy for your employees and relate to their concerns, and for you to communicate that back up to other leadership or to the project team. Another proven tactic is repeating an important message 5 to 7 times. If you guys have kids or younger siblings, you know the deal. You got to repeat something 5 to 7 times before that thing gets done. And that is no different here at the workplace. What we like to do is we like to switch it up. So typically we'll do email. We might do an open forum like a town hall, or just collectively gather the key stakeholders together. You'll still do the one-on-ones. You might get a Cal message. There's so many opportunities to receive a message here at Berkeley. So we do like to reiterate these messages 5 to 7 times. If we sound like a broken record, that's great. And if we don't, and it's the first time you've seen it by the 6th message, then great, we've landed the message. But at least you would have a consistent understanding of what our message is for the project at that time. And then lastly, what's in it for me? Answering that question for the employee, really having them become familiar with the why of the project, not just that they have to fall in line to what this process improvement project is trying to do, but really helping them kind of win over their hearts, not just their minds, of the why we're all embarking on this journey. Okay, I won't harp on this slide too much because it is a specific slide to a framework model used by ProSci, but I do want to just quickly glance over that what's depicted on this slide. So I talk a lot about the individual kind of going through their own journey. And so what we can do from a project standpoint to consider that individual's journey is something called ADKAR that ProSci uses. So ADKAR says, A for awareness is to help the person understand why the change is necessary in that process improvement project or project at hand. D is really helping them understand the desire and helping motivate that individual to want to become part of this change. K is for the knowledge that we want to start empowering that individual with, whether that's information or training. A is where we start seeing the person start to change. So that's where they gain the ability to start improving their behaviors into newly adopting whatever thing we're doing in our process improvement project. And then finally, R is for reinforcement, which is more likely on us as an organization to create a forum or a mechanism that helps the individual have a sustained way of getting that change into their new normal way of working. So ADCAR, I just want to say, happens in different waves for every single person, for every individual. But one thing we can do from a project standpoint is consider ADCAR throughout our project and use this kind of framework, whether it's in our communications or our trainings or our coaching or working with our sponsor to deliver messages that kind of adhere to the ADKAR. So you'll notice in my graphic here, and what I like about this graphic on the right-hand side is we have A, D, and K. They take us through the enablement zone, and then K, A, and R kind of push you through that engagement zone. So enablement is where you're really trying to get people just to understand why we're embarking on this journey, and then engagement is getting them on the journey with you. So aside from individuals going through the change in our process improvement projects, another major piece that we want to just enlighten everybody on is how deeply important and key to success by having a active and visible executive sponsor. I can't tell you how many times we've had someone raise their hand for a project that says, yeah, I'll be the sponsor. I'll put my name on the paper as the sponsor. And they did not do anything for the project besides offer their name for the project. It might be somebody in a super high level role, or might just be somebody in the right leadership role, but they weren't actually a part of the project besides signing their name up. So what are we actually looking for when you're a sponsor? It's actually more involved than just putting your name on a project charter as a sponsor. It means, doing the ABCs of a sponsor as I have depicted here on my slide. So the A is active and visible. What we really mean by that is you need to be, coming to the project kickoff and telling your project team why we're embarking on this journey and why you are sponsoring and championing this change. And that's going to be whether you're attending every project meeting or just, once a month or at the key points in the project phase timeline. We want the sponsor there and active at the front of the project, the middle of the project, and closing out the project. B is for building that network of advocates, which hopefully the sponsor that is on your project already has a good built out network and we can leverage and use that. And that's where you're trying to create a unified front of all the leadership that you need to get people on board in the teams below. And then lastly, C is just communicate, support, and promote. So they are going to offer the most credible voice that you can have for your process improvement project. I almost like to think of them as a TED Talk speaker at this point. They're not only playing a key role in helping the project team do decision making, but they are almost being that TED Talk speaker of communicating back out to the largest audience of why we've embarked on this decision for this process improvement project and talking more definitively about it than the project team is. So this sponsor is the most influential out of all leaders that you'll have on your project. And if they are not active and visible, most of the times we see that the project team struggles to create that network for themselves. Okay. Real quickly, we have a plethora of change management back pocket tools. The 5 on my screen are the ones that BPMO tends to use the most. And these are the ones in order of how we use them. So we like to keep it simple and stick to basics first. This is not going to be anything revolutionary or mind-boggling for you guys, but they are practical things you can do to help both the individual and the project keep chugging along as you think about change. So number 1 is a communication plan. Really simply thinking about who your stakeholders are and how they're going to receive the information in those 5 to 7 ways. Number 2 is going back to that last slide, that sponsorship roadmap. What is it that you need your sponsor to champion and guide throughout your project? And then 3, 4, and 5 are nice to haves. You may not have them all the time, but 3 is a coaching plan. So supporting the individuals through a transition process. This may be others who have already changed in the past, who you can leverage as coaches for your new affected team. And then 4 is a training plan where, you can, if you're implementing a new system or a new technology, have a solid training plan that actually does it another, just like our communication 5 to 7 times, you're training people either 2 to 3 times on this system, because likely the first time won't stick the first time they learn something. And then 5, ultimately a resistance management plan, which is a little harder out of the 1 through 5. But this is where you're considering those stakeholders and addressing the potential roadblocks and obstacles that you can see coming along the way. And then lastly, what we want to leave you with is change happens one person at a time. So, one gesture, one person, one moment at a time. It's okay if your people haven't changed all at the same time with your project. You just need to keep in mind that what we've talked about today can help you get people through that transition journey. So, whether it's active sponsorship, constant communication, being inclusive to the fact that your people are going to go on an emotional journey, and then considering from a project standpoint, marrying that people and technical side together, these are going to be the key elements that help your project ultimately get to success. So what we like to just say is lead with empathy, and the success should follow soon enough. The journey is not linear for everybody who goes through change, and we don't expect it to be, but your project likely will feel linear. So these are two things that are conflicting together that you have to consider when you're ultimately going through your projects. And I just have that quote there because I think it's a really good one. This is how change happens: one gesture, one person, one moment at a time. So lead with empathy and celebrate your progress with your team, and success will soon follow. So, Mike, that's my quick spiel on change management and process improvement. And then I want to just leave it open to the rest of the group here to share or talk about their own individual journeys with change management and process improvement projects.
Yeah, thanks, Priya. Let's just give a minute, see if anybody has any questions or thoughts about this presentation.
Hey, Mike, this is Casey from the Information Security Office. Priya, I just want to thank you for this presentation. It was incredibly clear and I think, hits all the main points that are needed with organizational change. My question for the group is when there's project management that is kind of being run on a schedule, and organizational change may slow that schedule down. Like, a lot of times technology, it's like, oh, all we have to do is flip this switch. It's going to take us 5 minutes. But communicating the change and getting people to adopt the change might take several months. How do you bake that into the project timeline in a way that we're not scuttling the project getting done, but we're also thinking about the ultimate goal, which is successful adoption of the change and not just like done, we've flipped the switch, we're good. So I'm curious how you walk that tension between slowing down for the people to catch up, but also not so slow that people make the change not happen in a timely fashion with the project.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Casey. I'll go back to our example with our team implementing Process Manager, and I'll leave it open for the rest of the team to answer. We turned on Process Manager in 2000, I think 18 or 19. We still allow the space for people to learn and grow, even though we've implemented this new system. So 6 years later, we are still doing BPMO office hours every single Wednesday to get people trained or just to ask just layman's questions behind the scenes. They might be in the system and they might still not know how to do some simple things. So first, allowing the space for them to feel like no question is stupid, and that if they haven't fully adopted or implemented every single thing in the new process, that it's okay. But also understanding that from a project standpoint, you may have a success metric that says turning the system on was success for the project. But for the people, this is an ongoing long-term journey. Like I said, not a mandate, but a 3 to 5 year journey to get people kind of onboarded and won over and bought in with this new technology. I know for me, I'm still figuring out Cal Answers and different other technologies. I mean, I still struggle with using our supply chain systems and stuff like that. So I've been at Berkeley for nearly 10 years and I'm still struggling with some of those systems. So that allowing people that emotional journey to feel okay with that, I think is the biggest answer I want to give first and foremost. And I'll let my team chime in on the rest.
Yeah, I'll add in, Casey, that's a great question on how we, and if I got it right, how we really integrate some of this change management into our project planning so that it's coordinated in the right way. And on the BPMO team, we've really made a concerted effort to think about how we do projects, how we do process, how we do change management all together. And so scheduling in all those from the awareness to the adoption, all the pieces of the change management, we build that into our work plan that coincides then with all the major milestones that we're putting forth. So I'm not sure if that helped answer the question as far as planning and ensuring that, it may take a second to turn on a switch, but the change management might take 3 months to get adoption. We build that into the work plan so the project doesn't complete until X point, which may mean total adoption, may mean, depending on where we are with the change management and what we deem as finishing our objective, because that change management could very well go on as far as adoption goes in relation to the project.
Go ahead, Stacy.
Sure. So my thought on this and change management in particular is change management in some ways never ends. It really needs to transition into a customer support model. One of the things that I think we all do, especially in central systems, is we're done with the new project or the new change. We've communicated it, we've trained people, and then we let it go. And the systems continue to evolve in small ways, but also we hire new people all the time. So each of those new people is embarking on their own change management journey as part of their onboarding experience. So I guess when I think of change management, I want to think of something that is sustainable through the life cycle of the solution or project.
Yeah, thanks, Stacy. Thanks, Russ. Thanks, Priya. And it's really a behavioral shift, an organizational shift as well, as far as getting away from okay, now we got our system out, let's communicate to everybody. Once there's an idea and the project is approved, that's when communication and awareness starts happening. People not waiting for the project to be halfway through and then say, oh, we should have a change management plan. It's almost too late. Then you're playing catch up at that point. Any other questions? Let's see, I saw some questions in here. Aisha said, how do you determine a reasonable and sustainable timeline for change? Priya or Russ, you want to take that one?
I would answer this maybe two ways. We've already just briefly talked about it with the last question that Casey asked. So you allow the long-term kind of timeline for people to go through that journey, but you consider your project timeline. So there are things like what I mentioned with the ADKAR framework. And if you're doing specifically a process improvement project, you might likely be following a DMAIC framework or something of the like. So you're considering taking people through that kind of ADKAR emotional journey with you through the project. So likely the change management technical change management side of things will be the timeline of your project. But like Stacy just said, then it goes into kind of a more people support for however long your team can support it. So that's why I said, BPMO, we still do office hour. We've been doing that for years now, every Wednesday for an hour. And so I would say there's a project side of things, and then there's like the long-term emotional journey for the group. And I want to pass it over to Nick.
I think kind of along those lines of what Stacy was speaking to about that long term. For the project, there's a change that you've got to attain in order to implement. And then you're moving to sustainment. So in a lot of the projects that we work on, we are working with a functional owner to make sure that they're setting up things in their best practices and their governance to make sure that you sustain those change, which is both the process itself, but also process performance and the sustaining of the change that people are performing themselves. And so that includes the change management, the people side of things. And I know there's another question from Tayo, but before that, Russ, did you have something else on this topic?
Yeah, I just wanted to add another great question. Aisha, thank you for that. And I'll put it in from a project manager's perspective. Our charter, as you know, is a very important part of how we go through a project. And one of your objectives should always have to do with the adoption of the change that you're putting. So a change management element. And that can help you in defining what the timeline is with relation to change management in your project and completing the project overall.
All right, so let's Tayo has a question here. I'll read it. So he has a question about process improvement, change management for two groups, process operators and their supervisors. Do you have tips or suggestions on how to approach these two groups who are involved in the same process, but at two different altitudes. I'll start off by saying this ties back to the importance of understanding who your stakeholders are and understanding how the change is impacting and who it's impacting. And it also ties to, I believe, one of the tools that Priya might have mentioned, which is a training plan and our coaching plan to make sure that the managers are aware of how their people's jobs are potentially changing. And in some cases where we actually developed communication plans specifically to the users and explaining how their roles were changing. And then we had talking points for the managers as well. So we communicate with them separately and give them tools to be able to help coach their individuals through the change. And Chris has his hands up.
I just want to add the piece that Mike just said about the coaching plan. So when Priya was talking about the tools, you saw that a coaching plan was one. And from experience at Berkeley, what I find the hardest piece is that the supervisors, as to Teo's question, the supervisors might not know all the details of the project, of the process you're improving. But in the coaching element, those supervisors are the most important people because they are the direct reports of those process operators. So, why I say that is to have the best success of your project is to have early meetings with those supervisors to get them, as Mike said, as part of your coalition of the change, even if they don't know the details, because they have those direct reports. And if you don't get the supervisors on board early to help them coach their direct reports, you're going to have less success. So why I want to share that is that tends to be hard at Berkeley. It tends to be that if we're going to try to coach someone through a change curve like ADCAR as project managers or change managers, we're going to have less success than their direct reporting lines. So why I say that is hard is that coaching tends to be really hard because a project is running. The supervisors have to coach best. So I want to draw attention to that because it's very important. It tends to be a problem on projects. And so it's really important to get them through that curve, and the supervisors can really, really help you. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Chris. I just want to do a quick time check. We get about 5 minutes, 6 minutes. So again, feel free. I'm not trying to cut off any questions, but we do have office hours every Wednesday, and feel free to send an email to bpmo@berkeley.edu or fill out our contact form on our website if you have any questions. And also in this slide deck are links to be able to schedule time in our office hours and links for additional help. Any challenges or successes that anyone would like to share in the next 5 minutes? Stacy.
All right, this one isn't, well, there are challenges to it, and it's a project we're working on for Bear by right now. Really, we're looking at adopting a lot more of service and training at the point of demand. So that's a project that's going on right now. We've been sort of doing shout outs and office hours announcements that we're looking at AI tools, some designed chat bots, and some new guided buying structures. One of the challenges that we have right now is we don't always know where our users and customers are having problems. We're referring to things like our service tickets to identify known problems and try and get those into the Bearby system. But I'm not, I know that there are problems that people have that they've never opened a support ticket for. So I'll say my challenge right now, and I'd look to this group or anybody else who's had a problem with Bearby to reach out and say, hey, here's a problem I have or a question I never get answered, because my challenge is finding a big enough user community to give us feedback.
That's great. Thanks, Stacy.
Sure.
And for those of you that have taken the yellow belt, green belt, black belt class, this is kind of the voice of the customer piece.
That's exactly what it is.
Remember, an improvement project starts with the voice of the customer. So thanks, Stacy, for that. Again, and if you have any questions, feel free to email me directly or email bpmo@berkeley.edu. We have office hours. Feel free to drop in. It's not just about process. If you have any questions on change management, project, Smartsheet, Miro, facilitation, anything and everything. If there's no other questions, thank you very much, everybody.